Thank you so much for taking time out. Sorry. Is it audible? Yeah, okay. So thank you so much for taking time out. I know you have a very busy schedule. We really are feeling privileged to have you join us to share your vision. Before I ask the ministers a question, a bit of a context. Indian energy industry is in a very interesting sweet spot. Globally, depending on the kind of projections you see, the market is expected to be slow growing, at best low single digit growth kind of projection for the next 30-40 years. But contrasting that, India is seen to contribute up to 30-33% of the future growth of energy demands in the world, 3x, 4x growth rate. And we also see a context where, because of the slow growth globally, potentially refineries might start shutting down, and we are starting to see some of those happening in European countries already. This presents a fantastic opportunity for India. India has a global scale, globally capable, best-in-class refinery infrastructure, and hence this high growth of local demand presents us an opportunity to really, and you've made a quote somewhere saying it's not just participating in, but India can shape the energy future of the world. So it'll be great to hear your vision. How are we going to shape, riding on the opportunity that we have as one of the largest consumers of energy in the future?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that I feel greatly privileged to be invited to an event like this. And I think the starting point of my response to your question, which actually covers the entire and very broad canvas, the starting point is that I myself continue to be amazed on a daily basis by the nature of the transformation which is taking place. Let me just cite one or two figures for your consideration. I was associated with this portfolio, I think 4.5 years ago or so. When I was told in 2021, when I was associated with Petroleum and Natural Gas Ministry, that the International Energy Agency in Paris has estimated that over the next 2 decades, 25% of the increase in global demand will come from India, I used to ask some of my colleagues whether there was a bit of padding or wishful thinking in these statistics. So I was rudely reminded that these are not our figures, these are the figures of the IEA in Paris, whose chief executive I came to know quite well. When I prepare for this session with you, I'm told that the figure has been revised upwards from 25% to 30%. And I checked those figures also. I think that's also correct. So how in a short period of time the situation is changing? Since we're talking about the changing situation, let me also share one or two other random thoughts with you. You know, I had, during my career in the Foreign Service, served in Brazil. When I went to Brazil in 2006, January to be precise, the government of India at that point of time had set for itself a target of 5% blending in biofuels in 10 of our states and union territories, not even in the whole country, in 10 of them. When I joined the ministry in 2021, we had a target of 10% blending to be achieved by 2022 end. November was the target, November 22. I think that's because of the ethanol blending year, that November one. And we achieved the target 5 months in advance. But we not only achieved the target 5 months in advance, we did something, in an act of bravado, we said that we are going to bring the 20% blending date forward from 2030, which is what it was set for 2030, and we did 6 years in advance. Now, a submission I make to you in the context of refining is that if your policy framework is properly thought through, if your support system has everything in place, then you find as you go from start to modest build to better build and onwards, in fact, the target and objective also can become more ambitious. And I think that is the case in our refining sector. This is my take on it. But you touched on another aspect about the global situation on refining. I have some notes. I said what's happening globally. And I'm told that as per reports, over 101 of the world's 420 refineries, representing nearly 18.4 million barrels per day, about 20% of global capacity, are at risk of closure within the next 7 to 10 years. That's a lot. If 20% refining capacity goes down, if I were a doomsday prediction mold minister, I would say, my God, this means that refining was no. But the fact of the matter is, whilst 21% of global capacity is being reduced, by the way, that's not the only one. Some of those teapot refineries will also go. So the figure is much higher. But the good news is that you've got India. You've got today, what, 258 or so million metric tons per annum. You have a target of, by 2030, of 310. But the fact of the matter is you've got plans either already afoot or on the drawing board to take it beyond that. I think it was at one of the India Energy Week meetings that the Prime Minister mentioned a figure. I nearly fell off my chair because I had in private conversations talking to my colleagues, the CMDs, and I see them here. I used to say कि यार ये 310 piece तो हो गया ये तो that we got plans in place for that in a few years time, but इसको आगे कितना ले जाओगे? And we used to say कि we'll have to do a study. We did a brainstorming on it. We said what will be the global situation, how much? So we said 400, but he took it to 450, the figure. Now it may be that the Prime Minister's style of functioning, he's testing or he's giving us a teaser. One day he asked me in a small meeting, ये refining capacity आप बढ़ा क्या रहे हैं इसमें क्या करेंगे? मैंने कहा जी petrochemical बनाएंगे, because I had done my homework. And believe me, I was asking Pankaj just now, the figure on the index, what's it called? Petchem index जो था, आपने एक figure बताया था यहाँ पे, it has gone up from 7.7% to 13%. I saw it on the screen, it's not in my notes. So fact of the matter, as my understanding in a simplified way, is that our utilization of petchem is 1/3 the global average. But for an economy which is growing very well, last quarter 7.8%, previous quarter 7.4%, and there's a gentleman sitting here, I saw his results for this quarter, and he always used to come up with a slightly grumpy look on his face. They've just gone up from 4,000 crores to 7,160 crores in just one quarter. Now don't be modest about it. The fact of the matter is your figures last quarter were also not that bad. It's just that you were carrying a lot of inventory, which was, look, my view is that this sector, and I'm sorry, I'm fast forwarding, this sector is providing today, Pankaj, what, 19% of the country's revenue? Okay? It's providing 19% of the country's revenue. The economic entities, whether they're in the private sector or public sector, are doing phenomenally well by not just Indian standards, I think global standards. Their capex is, I mean, I was seeing the figures from, if you look from 1st April to August figure, you'd already spent, I think, what, 35% or something, which is from my way of looking at it good, because all my years in government, first as a civil servant, then because there's a push which comes in the second half. पहले 3-4 महीने में इन्होंने 35% कर लिया. It's a good sign. But more important, I think, what is this, that We are today looking at the refining sector as very promising. And the refining sector, let me just say that you are today at fourth position. We are already exporting refined products to 50 plus countries, valued at over $45 billion. This is the fiscal year 24-25. And we are the top 7 exporters globally among them, with the ambition to enter the top 3. But I want to also share with you a general comment, which is one, the refineries themselves are part of the global markets today. If you're exporting 40 to 50 countries, you're importing crude from 40 countries. And they are increasingly integrated with petrochemicals, enhancing efficiency and export competitiveness. So your consumption is going up, definitely. When I joined, our consumption was 5 million barrels a day. Today, it's, I think, 5.6 million barrels a day. I think in the coming couple of quarters, little later, it'll be 6 million barrels a day. If you're looking at 2030, 2050, it's even beyond that. So consumption is going up. I'm coming to E&P, which is an area of concern for me. I'd like to see more. Your technology, your innovation, that is going up. The technology and the production, in terms of, if you call it indigenization, I think it's about 80% indigenized, which is again saying a lot. But look at the overall journey that we've reached, because you're talking about technology here, the innovation. You know, I was a young trade negotiator in the year 1981. September 1981, I went on my first assignment as on the trade side. I was 7 years in the service to what was called the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. And we had a dispute with the United States on that they were alleging that we were subsidizing the production and export of what are called sanitary castings and industrial fasteners. Now, these are very basic products made from, steel, iron, steel, so very basic. And they were saying that we had a scheme called the Cash Compensatory Support, or CCS, that we were giving this, and we fought them, we contested them. And they, according to the allegation then, these basic products, sanitary castings and industrial fasteners, were causing injury to the American market. This was, why? Because the Tokyo Round agreement on subsidies had been signed and we had not signed on to it for reasons, because there was a vice. We challenged them in the GATT and we won. And we had a bilateral agreement with them which said that the Cash Compensatory Support, CCS scheme, is designed to compensate and restitute the indirect taxes that a product bears. And we got away with, we never heard of it again. But I was just thinking back, today what is happening, I hear that our electronics exports are going to overtake our petroleum and refined products exports to become the second largest export item in India. My God, you see the journey? In both of them, very high quotient of technology and innovation. I'm going to have a section after this with some of our startups and young people. I feel good at one level that you are really ramping up. And believe me, it will go to 400 million metric tons per annum, because what is happening is that if you look at the world, right, there were two great engines pulling it. One was China and one was India. I think China is reaching a point where there is saturation is the point my moderator has used. I can agree with it. Because why? They're going into the big manner into the EV route, but it's coming from thermal. And China has been buying a lot, it's processing a lot, etc. And some of the smaller teapot refineries on nothing else but the test of viability. So I think what's happening is that when we look at this, and that's where this technology becomes very important, you're not looking only at India. Today, this is part of a global flow because you're importing crude from 40 countries. I would like our own E&P to grow up, and I'm very encouraged by what OIL is doing and ONGC is doing in the offshore deep water thing. What also the rejuvenation of Mumbai High, etc. I'm very happy with that. But if you look all around, this is the place which is happening both in terms of energy overall and energy technology in particular. And I think the refineries which you are discussing now are at the center of it. And I would like to see in the coming months and years an upgradation which is more. Your slides in the picture, you showed at green hydrogen. That's again a very interesting story. Because today, I think the tenders which were floated by IOCL and subsequently I think by HPCL, they have succeeded in bringing the price per kilo of green hydrogen below what was it was earlier, the lowest was $5.5. They brought it down to 4. In fact, if you take the GST part of it out, even below that. So I think the overall Indian energy scene looks very promising. And I think events like this, which bring together, experts and people who have the domain knowledge across a number of fields into this discussion, will at the end of the day enrich it, and I think we'll all benefit from it.
Great. I mean, very inspirational start, sir. We are third largest. We are fourth largest with a pathway to being the third largest energy ecosystem. Already a export hub, and you gave the statistics. I just want to pick one dimension from what you said. We're already import substitution is at the extent of 80%. But if you look at some of the critical chemicals, catalysts, and some balance of plant and equipment, we're still a little dependent on external technology. What's your vision to push this to, let's say, 100% indigenous?
Look,
move?
I look at Atmanirbharta and 100% indigenization in a slightly different way. Our recent experience has taught us that when global supply chains get challenged, you can have a problem. So I think we should be positive about this. We should try and do whatever we can. We should not hesitate to import wherever we can. Because the idea is not just that I must do everything 100%, because you're producing for the world. And as in manufacturing overall, if you're doing bulk of it in terms of domestic content, okay, if some things come from outside, go ahead and get them. It should not be that I must do it, because there is a cost element involved. If I can get something critical element cheaper, I think a big debate which is going to take place in the energy sector is on critical minerals. Again, I'm not the line minister for that, but I think the kind of thinking that's going on in the government just now, in order to access critical minerals not only inside the country. Earlier it was under the Atomic Energy Act, and because of that, the private sector couldn't get to it. Now, not only here, but if you're also looking at what's happening elsewhere in the world, I think a little more push on that, and I know the Honorable Prime Minister is very clear. There are resources. I know some countries started 10, 15, 20 years before us and they are sitting pretty. But I think with our customary catch-up potential, I think we will also resolve that. And I'm sure in the times to come, if you are already, you see, somebody has to sell to somebody also to produce. So, I mean, today, I shouldn't say this because I can be misquoted, but the fact is there is enough supply in the global market of crude. So even if one supply goes down, you've got alternatives elsewhere. And if the equation is that the overall supply and the increasing potential of supply is more than what the increase in demand is, then you're also comfortable. But it also takes you to some crucial questions. That trade is not governed by any established set of rules, like the General Agreement of Tariffs and Trade. The World Trade Organization was set up by as part of an intergovernmental agreement. There are the Article 1 deals with most favored nation, that if I give you a benefit, you have to give that, I have to give that to everyone else. Article 3 deals with national treatment. This is a very different dynamic. But I can tell you one thing. I'm finding even in the 4.5 years, this the sense of vulnerability I had. I mean, my boss's mind is not wired to take pressure. As a result, I don't take pressure either. But as we go on, our ability to navigate through these global challenges is increasing. So my vision is that on the energy front, India's growth from a $4 trillion to a $6, $7, $10 trillion, energy will play a crucial part. that energy framework enhancement will not only supply to India, but I think in the years to come for countries around India and globally. You know how much of processed products we are selling to the rest of the world? I mean, you have the figure, you are a professional in that. I only get to know because I have sessions like this to attend.
No, it's a very large number. So I know you.
No, these are very large numbers. As I said, if you are importing, you know, and we've been widening it. Earlier, our imports were from 27 countries. We are from 40 countries now. I think Argentina said we got a cargo. Our exports also, whenever I go elsewhere, the kind of demand that the request that you get, I mean, and it's going to go more and more. I'm hoping that with the establishment of the Global Biofuels Alliance, I think biofuels will also get traded. And there are a lot of countries which will have demand for that. You mentioned SAF on that play.
Yeah.
Look, sustainable aviation fuel or SAF will take off. And it will take off whether it is on account of mandating mixing requirements which the European Union sets. On my own, I set up a 1-3-5%, 1% by 27 and 3%, 5%. And there's no reason why you will not succeed, because you have the biomass, you have the scale, you have the refineries. So I think on all fronts, it's looking good, and with technology, and that's I think the crucial part of it. Because sometimes you can have all the raw materials, if you don't have the technology and the innovative drive, you can't pull it off.
Very well said. I picked up a couple of themes. Be practical about indigenization. We are trading with multiple countries, so there is a little bit of a give and take that needs to be kept in mind, and comparative advantage as well. And the opportunity and the future outlook is pretty bright, including in all the new technology, and a massive focus on innovation and cultivating innovation. Just one dimension as India becomes the one of the global hubs in refining. A model which has worked very well elsewhere is integrated petrochemical complexes, and I know there's a thought process which India has already embraced. A little bit of light from you on how are we approaching these integrated complexes?
No, I think the conversation I cited with my boss, Varadara's query, what will you do? I think all the newer complexes, I think some of you have to correct me, like for instance, the Andhra thing, it's an integrated complex, a very heavy focus on petchem, it's also there, even when we are doing refining, except. So I think the expansion in refining capacity is taking place firmly anchored with a view to what will be required and how it is to be played up. I mean, I read somewhere in my notes that our refiners have, let me see if I can find it, how many different kinds of crude that they are able to, 200 different kinds of crude. 200 different kinds of crude are being able to polish. What is it that they're doing there? What is their capacity in terms of what is the refining catalyst market? Currently, $1.4 billion, okay, out of which 70-75% is still imported. Okay, then if you look at other things, what are the government schemes which are looking at this? Your PLI scheme is doing in National Center for Catalyst Research, expanded R&D incentives for materials and process technology. I mean, it's a huge canvas. That's what I called it, a canvas. I think in the times to come, don't take credit for it now, because this has been in the making for a long time. I mean, I am so humbled when I go to Assam, the first refinery was what, 1901?
Yeah,
Dig Boy. And where did Dig Boy come from? Dig Boy, dig. And that became the Dig Boy. I hope we get a refinery called Drill Baby Drill also, but I don't know whether we can. But seriously, I think after 2014, because when I said things were happening earlier, biofuels didn't take off till 2014, because no matter what you wanted to do, the fact is you didn't have the ecosystem in place. Yeah. After 2014, on biofuels, you put the thing in place. On green hydrogen, clearly, when the Prime Minister announced from the ramparts of the Red Fort that we are going to do green hydrogen in mission mode, it took off. Yeah. Okay? On refining capacity, there were some very big decisions. Yeah. I mean, Barmer is a case in point. All right, there have been delays, but we'll get it done very soon now. HPCL, then Andhra refinery. So you're looking at, you know, Andhra, about 98,000 crores. I don't know the figures. And I was told one of our other oil companies are getting 10% there. No, people are joining in. They're joining into the thing. So when things are doing well, when the system is well established, and there is clear, input-output quantification to a simplified mind like me, the sector will do well. So I think in the year 2035, as 101 refineries close down, big ones, as teapot refineries also close, we will go definitely from the fourth to the third. You may end up with the second largest refining sector. And the economy, you have a young demography. I mean, your average age, 29. And if you look at what is happening in terms of things, when their per capita income, energy consumption is to go up. Yeah. And so maybe your basket of energies will change. Certainly in transport fuels they will change. They will do in other things also. I mean, I only deal with one aspect. My colleague who's a railway minister wants to run railways through green hydrogen. Now we are going into, ships. You're talking about green steel, etc. So it's a fascinating exercise. But I think when you have meets like this and you have people coming from all over the world to not only share but display, because there's something beautiful about knowledge and technology.
Yep.
It also needs an audience. That's why when you go to the India Energy Week, and I hope everyone here will come to the next one in Goa, because if you are able to demonstrate your technology, you are also able to market it better. And there's no point marketing it on a general social media, because there are half the guys don't know the spelling, and so they will come after you for something or the other. But if you are talking to a established group of professionals, young people, that's why I was very keen that the India Energy Week, our universities should participate, our startups should participate, and make it a little longer. Let it be an incubation, knowledge incubation exercise on a larger scale.
Very good. So you already touched on this point. I'm going to ask you to amplify a little bit. You talked about the transition of the fuel mix. You're going to move a little larger share of naphtha, talking about oil to fuel to oil to petrochemicals kind of a transition. How are we as a country enabling this? And India is going to be in an interesting spot where it's going to be fuel and petrochemicals, right? It's not like one
Has to be both. Has to be both. Yeah. Because this is a sector which is heavily capital intensive. Yeah. So, again, I'll go by the past experience. I mean, who was this bright young economist working in Shell, I think, in the year of the Lord, 1976. Was it 76? He predicted that oil will peak by 2000. And a lot of people, I hope brilliant consulting firms like yours didn't make that prediction or support it. A lot of people lost a lot of money. I happened to land up in New York in 2009, May. That was a time when the Millennium Development Goals were coming to the end. And the architecture of these Sustainable Development Goals was being discussed. And the Sustainable Development Goals are 2030. It's called Agenda 2030. That's the name for it. What will the world look like? Luckily for us, before the SDGs came, Mr. Modi came along in 2014, and he already set the stage for our sustainability, which is found in our Swachh Bharat mission, in our urban transport, our metro system is growing by leaps and bounds, in our smart cities mission and technology, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana and all that. But one of the things I was happily surprised to find that I was not the only one saying it, that the MDGs succeeded because a large developing country, now $20 trillion economy called China, succeeded with a little help from Nigeria, South Africa, India. But everyone in New York said SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals will succeed because India will succeed. And that is what you are seeing here now. These were decisions put in much earlier. Refining capacity is not something that I can create out of a budgetary provision this year and hope in 5 years' time refine. No, You have it, you are growing it, and therefore, why am I giving you this long-winded thing? That when it comes to fuel and petchem, the fact of the matter is, all the guys who talked about sustainability thought that, but it's a switch off, now we will go into green. Arey bhai, you have to make the transition from where you are today to where you want to be. And that transition will require both sustainable fuels, that's why green hydrogen. We set a target of what? Increasing our the role of natural gas in our matrix from 6 to 15%. We haven't done very well on that. I mean, so we will do well, but you know, there's still a long way to go. Natural gas, I think, is a link fuel, and therefore this thing. But going forward, petchem definitely you need. I mean, I have the figure somewhere on the kind of petchem. Something like $1 trillion figure is what I've got here. You have to go there, but you have to do fuel also the traditional way. I would like to see our industrial sector, our refineries, and I keep making this message to those of my friends who have refineries. IOCL has 11. I would like to see more and more using green hydrogen, and I think they've done a good start. I think the targets which we've got will all have to be revised in about 5 years' time. It's too early to set. There's no one. I remember in 2014, somebody must have said, one of my predecessor would have said, okay, we will go up to so much million metric tons per annum refineries. And some guy in the press wrote a nasty article saying, hey, wait, kya bol rahe, abhi to yahan nahi pahuncha. Arey bhai, this is something where if you make these strides, all right, we are going to be at 310 or 320 by 2030 or thereabouts. Right. After that, you're not talking about, when you talk about energy, you don't talk about the next 5 years. You talk about 10, 15. And so if you're 10, 12 years away from a particular, when your per capita income is going to, according to your estimates or one of the other firms' estimates I read, then going on to 2047. So in that, the journey, you will have both playing a massive role with an, I was a little taken aback that BP has something called an annual outlook. And when they did that presentation in Delhi, I would have thought that by 2050, traditional fuels should be down, but they were not that much down. They were down, yes, but I would have expected traditional fuels to, almost disappear from the chart so that you can come like a statistician, you could say, oh, it's de minimis now, you can't see it on, no, but it's still there. So I don't think anybody like me who's a visitor to the sector, I mean, I was not educated as a, most of these gentlemen or ladies sitting here are all, yeah, aap chemical engineer hai na sare, mostly. They are experts, they will know. But looking at it as a interested spectator, now participating in it, I think your question is fascinating, but someday some of us should sit down and say, how much of one will there be and how much of the other? Government policy is clear. We are perhaps the only member of the G20 which has met its Paris commitments, number one. We have not allowed our sustainability targets to be diluted. And today, even as we are increasing our E&P, increasing our refining capacity, we are also going on that path. So I think government policy is clear. I think we have to execute it with the same vigor till 2047 and beyond. Which means you have to elect the BJP government. No, I've done that. I mean, I'm now, when I have a mic in front of me, I say that, but I also mean it also.
On that really positive and happy note, thanks for a very inspiring session. I picked up this leapfrogging as a very interesting theme. We've always met and exceeded targets and done them in a sustainable manner. What you talked about exceeding our Paris commitment. So energizing to have you, sir. We've just come to the end of our session. Very nice.
No, I want to thank you very much. Listen, when you talk about leapfrogging, I do what is called, I always try and look at the other side of it. So it's all very well, these guys come and say, so 20% biofuel blending हो गया. मैंने कहा ठीक है गाली पड़ने वाली है. अभी बात करोगे अगर 22 की बालोगे तो कोई गाली देगा, कोई किसी और स्टेटमेंट में वो भी गाली पड़े. It doesn't matter. I also ask myself, where are the areas where we are not meeting targets? Because it can't be that you're meeting all the targets. No, I think in some areas, the setting of the objective and target was a bit unrealistic. Like, I'm very keen on biogas, and we're doing a lot on biogas. We have about 100 biogas plants operational. We have another 73 or so in the pipeline. I'm talking to the Chief Minister of State. They're all coming at it. But the fact of the matter is, if you set yourself an unrealistic target, then, pay the price. So I think so far what convinces me is that on the energy front, by and large, our target setting has been ambitious, but not overly ambitious. And where you have ambitious targets and you want to go, you have to take the system along. I mean, everyone must feel safe that if you are going from, say, 20% blending to 22% or thereabout, we must carry the ecosystem. And we also have a narrative setting contribution to make. But thank you very much.